At 6:17 a.m., deep in the Donetsk region, Ukrainian reconnaissance drones captured a quiet but ominous scene. 17 Russian soldiers gathered near two armored vehicles, a senior officer standing among them. Moments later, live footage streamed to a Ukrainian command post ignited a chain of decisions that would unfold with extraordinary speed. Within minutes, a mechanized response force moved into motion. Its lead vehicle, a Bradley fighting machine racing through the haze toward the front line. What began as simple observation was about to become a case study in modern warfare. The fusion of eyes in the sky, precision armor, and soldiers trained to move as one. None of them yet knew that this short engagement would alter the tempo of an entire sector. From that moment, the battlefield turned into a test of technology, nerve, and command. At first light in the Donetsk region, Ukrainian drones hovered silently above a small Russian formation of 17 soldiers, including one senior officer and two armored personnel carriers. The unmanned aerial vehicles captured the moment those troops were preparing to move forward. Instantly, the data streamed into the control post of the 47th Mechanized Brigade, which responded within minutes. Thanks to that timely intelligence, what might have been a Russian initiative became a Ukrainian-triggered engagement. The significance of this moment is twofold. First, it shows how unmanned systems now lead the battlefield. The drone did not simply observe, it initiated action. By spotting the enemy grouping, including high-ranking leadership and two APCs, the Ukrainians gained a window of opportunity they would not otherwise have had. The senior officer present increased the value of the target. Removing a commander short-circuits enemy coordination. The two APCs signaled mechanized mobility, so the Ukrainians knew they were facing a threat that would soon move. Once the feed arrived at the brigade command, decisions were made fast. The 47th swung into action rather than waiting for the usual buildup of artillery or engineer reconnaissance. This is diagnostic of modern warfare. Reconnaissance is nearly simultaneous with decision, not hours behind. UAVs in this operation gave real-time awareness. Reports show that Ukrainian drone forces struck more than 67,000 Russian targets in 1 month alone, underscoring how critical unmanned systems have become. In that sense, the element of surprise did not stem from numbers of troops, but from data superiority. The Russians may have approached with mechanized strength, but the Ukrainians maintained information dominance. They observed first, transmitted data, then mobilized. With the enemy clustered and revealed, the Ukrainians had the initiative. The two APCs became known quantities before they fired a shot. The senior officer's presence was recorded, the location locked, decisions made. This leads to the maneuver. While the enemy was still moving into position, Ukrainian command had already set forces in motion. Mobilization by the 47th Mechanized Brigade happened swiftly because the intelligence was actionable. Instead of waiting for a full regimental formation or heavy artillery support, the lead mechanized unit advanced directly. That speed reduced reaction time for the Russians, denying them the chance to organize or retreat. What the viewer should appreciate is the seamless integration of reconnaissance and action. Drone footage did not end with observation. Once the cluster was detected, mechanized units entered the fray. This represents a shift from traditional models where scouts, then intelligence, then attack happen in sequence. Here the sequence is compressed. Detect, decide, move. The Ukrainian side had blurred the phases. In doing so, they increased tempo, and tempo often equals advantage on the battlefield. In addition, the terrain plays a role. Donetsk's front lines are networked with trenches and forest lines. For the Russian force to be spotted with drones implies they were not fully concealed, or that the Ukrainians had air superiority in terms of aerial observation. This tilt in the reconnaissance domain undermines conventional armor plus infantry advance because the attacker loses the element of hidden approach. In this case, the Russians walked into visibility before they committed fire. Finally, the psychological effect of detection cannot be overstated. When one side knows it is seen, its freedom of maneuver shrinks. The Russians were no longer operating with surprise, they were vulnerable. The Ukrainians converted that vulnerability into decision advantage and then into movement. And from that movement would come combat. Steel would move, as our transition suggests. As coordinates locked in, steel began to move. In this part of the story, we see how the first domino falls. The key was not how many tanks, but that they were spotted before they fired. The next parts will show how that spotting led to mechanized shock, infantry exploitation, and collapse of the enemy's armored punch. At the moment the drone data landed on the command table, another gear shifted on the battlefield. A M1A2, Bradley infantry fighting vehicle, guided by the unseen eyes of unmanned aircraft, roared forward and delivered its infantry into the trench network while firing its 25mm cannon to suppress the Russian positions. In that instant, the Ukrainian force moved from detection into action. The vehicle advanced steadily, its turret scanning, cannon firing, infantry dismounting. It did more than transport troops, it delivered shock. The significance of this mechanized assault goes beyond the hardware. It reveals a coordination triangle: unmanned aerial surveillance that sees first, mechanized mobility that strikes rapidly, infantry aggression that holds ground. In this instance, the Ukrainian unit, under guidance from the aviation assets, used the Bradley to bridge open terrain, to deliver troops into a prepared trench, and to fire the 25mm Bushmaster cannon at enemy positions. The Bushmaster system is rated for direct fire against light armor and personnel, giving the Bradley both carrying capacity and fire support capability. From the moment the Bradley crested the forward slope, infantry trooped out of the ramp, rapidly spreading into the trench system. The 25mm cannon barked shots that ripped into Russian defensive slots before the enemy could fully react. The suppression allowed Ukrainian foot soldiers to disembark and get into position under relative cover. Without the mechanized thrust, the infantry might have had to approach under fire or wait hours for artillery. Instead, they were inserted almost seamlessly. What we witness here is a mature combat rhythm. The drone detected and passed the target. The Bradley moved to strike. Infantry exploited the breach. Each component, intelligence, armor, manpower, worked in rhythm. This is not step-by-step in sequence, but rather overlapping phases. Reconnaissance overlapped deployment, overlapped assault. Ukraine's forces are evolving into a fully integrated combat system, not just loosely coordinated arms. Analysts have noted that Ukrainian crews are using Bradleys in unorthodox ways for Ukrainian terrain and threats. The importance of this section of the fight cannot be overstated. The mechanized assault under drone guidance demonstrates how Ukraine is not just defending, but maneuvering, attacking, exploiting space. It shows that modern warfare is less about sheer mass and more about tempo, integration, and surprise. The Bradley spearhead represented a physical manifestation of that principle. Steel moved where eyes told it to, and soldiers followed where the cannon cleared. And so we arrive at the point of transition. While the main assault had succeeded in its initial thrust, a new threat would soon appear on the right flank, testing every assumption of coordination and tempo. But the Ukrainian force had already established its advantage. Its axis of advance, supported by unmanned and mechanized assets, was primed for what came next. But on the right flank, another threat emerged that would test this balance. When the Ukrainian infantry settled inside the captured trench line, the next phase of the battle began with a sudden burst of fire from the right flank. A Russian tank, hidden behind a narrow tree line, opened fire toward the newly arrived Ukrainian troops. The shot tore through the branches and shook the ground, forcing the soldiers to press harder against the trench walls. The moment showed how quickly the calm after an assault can turn into danger, because heavy armor can change the balance of a fight in seconds. Ukraine answered this threat with its own armored vehicle, possibly a T-64 or a Leopard 2, both of which are used by Ukrainian forces depending on the sector. Western reports note that Ukraine has deployed German-made Leopard 2s as shock elements on several fronts, while older Soviet-era T-64s remain the backbone of many tank units. The Ukrainian tank moved into position with careful control, using the drone feed to track the Russian gun barrel through the trees. That live intelligence allowed the crew to turn the turret before the enemy could fire a second time. The Ukrainian crew took the shot as soon as the tank cleared the rise. The first round hit the Russian tank low on the hull, and the second struck moments later, sending fire and smoke into the sky. The strikes disabled the vehicle almost immediately, proving how effective coordinated targeting can be when drones guide the aim. Western analysts have repeatedly said that drone-to-tank coordination has changed the way armored battles unfold in Ukraine, because tank crews now fire with far more certainty than in past conflicts. Once the Russian tank was knocked out, the Ukrainian infantry pushed deeper into the first trench network. The destroyed vehicle created a gap in Russian coverage, and the troops used that moment to expand their hold on the position. They secured new firing angles, collected dropped weapons, and cleared the corners where Russian soldiers had retreated only minutes earlier. The duel between the tanks changed the field instantly, because armor often decides who keeps the initiative when fighting in open or semi-open ground. This part of the battle also shows how real-time coordination works. The drone operators watched every movement from above, while the tank crew kept their eyes on the tree line and the infantry listened for incoming fire. That cooperation allowed each unit to trust the others, reducing reaction time and increasing accuracy. Military researchers have noted that this style of coordination, known as sensor-to-shooter linking, has become one of the clearest signs of Ukraine's rapid modernization. What happened next was the natural result of the duel. With the Russian tank burning and the trench line under Ukrainian control, the tempo of the fight changed again. The infantry spread through the captured ground, checking for mines, looking for wounded, and preparing to meet whatever new force might appear. Every soldier understood that one victory would not end the clash, because Russian units often send reinforcements when their forward elements fall under pressure. The tank duel itself lasted less than a minute, yet it reshaped the engagement. It erased the immediate threat, opened the way for infantry to advance, and forced Russian forces to reconsider their next move. But battles in Donetsk rarely pause for long, and even a strong blow to the opposition can trigger a larger response. The Ukrainians knew they had won the first exchange, yet they also understood that more armor and infantry might soon move toward their position. Yet victory attracts response. The Russians were far from finished. The destruction of the Russian tank did not end the fighting, because minutes later new enemy vehicles pushed toward the Ukrainian positions. Russian BMP infantry carriers and T-72 tanks advanced from the tree line, firing heavy rounds that kicked up dirt and shook the trench walls. Their goal was clear: overwhelm the Ukrainian troops and regain the ground they had lost only moments before. The sudden arrival of these reinforcements created a new wave of danger, and the battlefield shifted again as both sides raced to gain the advantage. The Russian vehicles opened fire with their cannons and machine guns, creating a wide zone of suppression. BMP-2 vehicles, which carry 30mm guns, are known for their ability to keep infantry pinned down with quick bursts and long-range fire. Alongside them, T-72 tanks delivered high explosive shells that tore into the ground and sent shockwaves through the captured trenches. The combination of these systems showed how the Russians hoped to break the Ukrainian line by firepower before sending infantry back in. Ukraine responded without hesitation. A soldier carrying a Javelin anti-tank missile moved to a firing position while the drone operators helped guide the target. Western officials have said that the Javelin remains one of the most effective anti-tank weapons used in Ukraine, with its top attack ability giving it an advantage against older Russian tanks. The missile locked onto the signature of the T-72, then launched upward, vanishing briefly into the sky before diving down toward the tank's turret. The strike hit its mark. A flash burst across the field, followed by a thick stream of smoke rising from the vehicle. The T-72 stopped moving almost immediately, and the crew became trapped inside the burning tank. The hit also broke the Russian advance because losing a tank in the middle of a push created confusion and fear among the following vehicles. As the Ukrainian infantry held their line, a Russian BMP attempted to rescue the wounded crew. The vehicle drove into the fire zone, trying to reach the disabled tank, but the pressure of incoming fire forced it into chaos. The BMP reversed sharply, moved forward again, then shifted sideways as more blasts hit the ground beside it. The crew finally made a quick decision to retreat, leaving behind the damaged T-72. This rescue attempt highlighted the dangerous environment armor crews face when drones, missiles, and infantry fire converge on a single point. With the enemy retreating, Ukrainian troops moved through the newly secured area. The soldiers advanced carefully, checking bodies, scanning corners, and collecting equipment. They recovered radios, ammunition, and field notes items that often reveal call signs, positions, and planned movements. Western military analysts have emphasized that captured documents can offer more value than a destroyed vehicle, because they expose enemy organization and future intentions. The infantry worked quickly because they understood that every minute mattered. The faster they gathered weapons and communications gear, the sooner they could understand what force the Russians might send next. The battlefield was still active, and the smoke from the T-72 mixed with the sound of artillery in the distance. Yet the soldiers remained focused, collecting each item with a calm, practiced rhythm. This phase of the operation showed the importance of acting while the enemy is still reorganizing. Ukraine had halted the Russian push through a single well-timed missile strike, and the collapse of that advance allowed the infantry to strengthen their hold. The success came from the combination of drones, anti-tank weapons, and steady movement through captured ground. Each piece supported the others, creating an advantage that no single weapon could have produced alone. As the troops gathered their finds, they noticed signals of further activity deeper in the Russian-held zone, and this discovery hinted at something larger waiting ahead. Their recovery on the battlefield was only the start of a new turn in the operation, because what they found would soon lead them to something even more valuable. That recovery would soon lead them to something even more valuable. The final phase of the fight began when a Ukrainian reconnaissance team moved past the burned T-72 and pushed deeper into the area the Russians had abandoned. Their goal was simple: find remaining threats, check for hidden weapons, and search for anything the drones might have missed. As they advanced through shattered trees and scorched ground, the team spotted a large artillery piece ahead, a 2A-65 MSTB howitzer that had been struck earlier by FPV drones. The damage was clear from the twisted trails of metal and the broken gun shield, proving how much force these small explosive drones can deliver. Western sources say that FPV-style strikes have become one of the most effective tools in the war because they can disable heavy systems at very low cost. When the team approached the ruined artillery, they noticed movement beneath the gun. A closer look revealed several Russian soldiers hiding in the shadows of the damaged weapon. They were shaken and exhausted, likely from the earlier drone strike that had destroyed the howitzer. The reconnaissance team gave clear commands to surrender, and the Russian troops obeyed, dropping their rifles and raising their hands. The Ukrainian soldiers disarmed them quickly, checked for explosives, and secured the area. Moments like this are rare in an active battle, because artillery crews are often caught in the open and do not always survive drone attacks. This capture was important not only because it removed enemy personnel, but also because it offered a chance to gather intelligence. Artillery crews usually carry maps, firing tables, radio frequencies, and range cards that reveal planned targets and support networks. Defense analysts have pointed out that documents captured on the battlefield often help identify supply routes and command patterns, providing information that drones or sensors cannot record. The reconnaissance team collected everything of value while the rest of the force secured the perimeter. Another key detail from this phase is the complete lack of Ukrainian losses. The entire operation from the first drone sighting at dawn to the capture of the howitzer crew ended with 0 casualties on the Ukrainian side. This outcome is unusual in modern warfare, where trench lines, artillery, and armored vehicles normally create high-risk conditions for infantry. Military researchers note that Ukraine rarely completes complex combined arms missions without injury or loss, which highlights how well-coordinated this engagement was. The steady flow of information from UAVs, the rapid response of armor, and the discipline of the infantry all work together to reduce danger at each stage. This part of the operation also shows how Ukraine is evolving as a military force. The country has moved far from the early months of the war, when units often fought with limited coordination and improvised equipment. Now, drone feeds connect real-time surveillance to armored thrusts and reconnaissance sweeps, creating a battlefield where information drives every action. In this mission, the drones spotted the initial Russian grouping, guided the Bradley through the suppression phase, helped locate the enemy tank, and led the recon team to the disabled howitzer. Every step shows how Ukraine is combining unmanned systems with traditional tools to create a flexible and adaptive force. The intelligence gathered at the howitzer site added another layer of understanding to the conflict. Ukraine could use the captured data to track artillery movements, disrupt Russian supply lines, or target new positions with drones or counter-battery fire. In high-intensity warfare, knowledge becomes as valuable as weapons, and this small capture might influence future decisions on the Donetsk front. By the time the recon team called in the final report, the battlefield had gone quiet. The smoke from the destroyed vehicles drifted slowly in the wind, and the Ukrainian troops regrouped with the confidence that comes from a well-executed plan. The mission had combined observation, speed, technology, and discipline in a way that marked a clear shift in modern operations. But beyond tactics lies the deeper question: what does this tell us about the future of the war? The battle in Donetsk ended in less than an hour. Yet every minute revealed something deeper about the direction of this war. Ukraine moved with clear coordination, using drones to guide armor and infantry in a way that broke the Russian attack before it could fully form. Western reports have shown how Russian forces continue to lose armored vehicles to smarter and cheaper systems, especially UAVs and precision-guided weapons. This engagement reflected that imbalance clearly, because a larger Russian force fell to a faster and more adaptive opponent. Each phase from the first drone sighting to the capture of the howitzer crew showed a military learning in real time, while Russia struggled to respond. It is a reminder that on today's battlefield, advantage belongs to those who think quicker and act together. If you want more detailed reports on modern warfare, remember to subscribe to Military Force so you never miss the next frontline analysis.